Are you ready to learn about the property market? Then you're in the right place. This is Everything Property by Pivotal Homes, where we connect Australia's best developers, agents, home buyer specialists, wealth creation experts, and property advisors to the people of Australia. Broadcasted from Whitehorse Studios on the Gold Coast. And now, here are your hosts, Hayden Ashton and Tom Egan.
G'day listeners and viewers right across the country. Welcome to Everything Property by Pivotal Homes, where we connect Australia's best developers, agents, home buyer specialists, wealth creation experts and property advisors to the people of Australia. Now, today's guest is the Managing Director of JLF Group, a privately owned boutique property company incorporating property development, investment education and finance. He holds a bachelor's degree in law and commerce, majoring in accounting. JLF have assisted their clients purchase over 11,000 properties at a total value of over $3 billion. It gives me great pleasure to welcome James Fitzgerald, Managing Director of JLF Group of Companies. Welcome, mate.
Thanks, Hayden. Tom, sounds like pretty good. I reckon sounds like I wrote that.
Yeah, it is, mate. Straight off your LinkedIn profile, that one.
No, good to be here with two professionals good at their craft. An unlikely duo, a musician and a bouncer.
Yeah, that's right.
In a former life. Who was who? Who was what?
You can probably take a guess, but the tall timber over here was the bouncer, and I used to just watch him up on stage. I was singing, playing guitar, and he was belting people, but we'll leave that story to another day.
Hopefully not whilst you were singing.
Yeah. Well, no, I used to start singing, and I'd be like, last plane out. Kaysan or something would come up, and some because it's in Townsville, some drunk guy would come up and try and grab the mic, and Tommy would get up on stage and start throwing them off. It was.
Different times.
And
now you're throwing buyers off contracts.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Hopefully not. We don't want to do that.
He was to 16. Get your buyers on.
Oh yeah, exactly right. Yeah, exactly right.
I didn't realise he was only 16 at the time, so I'm 3 years older. But yeah, different.
We won't talk about the responsible surge of alcohol that you stuffed up there, mate. But James, thanks so much for coming on, mate. Really appreciate you taking the time out of what I could imagine is a busy schedule, given the enormous, I suppose, responsibility you've got with such a reputable company and with so many sort of operations underway. But, mate, what I like to do, which you probably have seen, is like to give the people watching and listening context and provide a foundation as to who you are, your story, JLF, custodian, all that sort of stuff, and give them an understanding of where you come from. Yeah,
sure. So JLF Group of Companies was started by my uncle, who's my dad's brother. He started that company in 1981, and his backstory, he's got a decent sort of profile, but his backstory is that the age of 8, lost his father in a car accident.
Right.
Age 10, shipped off to boarding school. They're from Melbourne, 5 kids. And the age of 16, left school, and 17, hitchhiked his way up to the Gold Coast, started in real estate, working for a bunch of Jewish property moguls, who took him under their wing and taught him a couple of things, mainly success is repetition, only truth in numbers. Off the back of that, he went into business with them and eventually, or since gone on to, build the business that we have, bought, sold, developed more than 15,000 properties in 5 states of Australia, hundreds of different developments, and that was in 81. Fast forward, though, to 1998, and his mentor said to him, "Hey, John," and it's a bit of a Jewish saying, "you're standing still." And the saying goes, if you're standing still, you're going backwards. So you've got to find a way to give back and give back to the industry that gave you everything you got. Never got to work another day in your life if you don't want to. So he wrote the book, 7 Steps to Wealth, which basically took the investment philosophies and strategies that he'd been taught and practicing himself and put it in a thesis that could be used by the everyday Australian, mum and dads. And off the back of that, build a business called Custodian to help them implement the strategy if they wanted the help. So that business today has helped more than 3,800 Australians put together a property portfolio in excess of 11,000 properties. So there, we talk a lot in numbers because this is the old saying, the truth in numbers. So that's an average of 3 properties a client, which puts them in the top 1% of all Australians. So that's that business. And then we do have a business called Invest Loan, a mortgage broking business that sits on the side. It's done billions of dollars worth of transactions, probably does 19 out of 20 of our clients mortgage work. Not everyone, but most. And yeah, we're a property investor developer ourselves with I think 14 million square metres of land in all different parts of Australia.
Yeah, wow.
So that's us.
Mate, quite a lot of numbers there. But you touched on it quickly, 7 steps to wealth, which if you looked into sort of property education or that sort of stuff and you're watching, the chances are you've probably been exposed to this book as well. I read a thing on the website, Australia's #1 book on real estate, and endorsed by 3 of Australia's billionaires.
Yes, it's been a very successful book. John wrote it, 22 years ago now. It's in its 8th edition. I think it's been read by more than 250,000 Australians, and 3 of Australia's property billionaires have endorsed it, which is pretty cool, I think. The richest list was out only on the weekend just gone. Top 250 richest Australians, and 1/5 of the top 100 are property people.
Yeah, wow.
Which, you think about how many industries there are throughout Australia. For 1/5 of the top wealthy Australians to come from property and build their fortune through property tends to show you that it's certainly, it's an asset that probably works better than most.
Mate, you mentioned there Invest Loan, the finance side of the company. Was that, as we know, finance is the most important part of purchasing property or developing property or doing anything related to properties, having the available credit if you don't obviously have the cash to purchase it. Was that born out of necessity to assist the custodian clients with the appropriate credit advice?
Yeah, so it was born in the year 2000, so 2 years after custodian started.
Yep.
And the reason was there was 2 things that we saw were a bit of an issue when it came to the longevity of our clients being able to build their portfolios. The first one is a lot of the mortgage brokers who were setting up purchases portfolios were cross-collateralising all the loans. So they were grouping the investment loans with each other, but also tying them up with the own home. Whereas John felt that there was a better way to do it, which was something he'd sort of been doing, which was to have them all separately allocated to different banks, or certainly not cross-collateralised, so that if your portfolio is worth $1 million and one property has $100,000 worth of growth in a year, you're able to access maybe 80,000 of that to go and put a deposit on another property and grow your portfolio. Whereas if they're all cross-collateralised with different banks, they force you to get the whole portfolio valued. So if you've got one that's gone up 100,000, but another one that's gone down 50,000 or hasn't gone up, then all of a sudden they say, well, the portfolio might have gone up 100,000, but we're going to look at the portfolio as a whole, and therefore, rather than giving you the 80,000, we only deem that $60,000 is available, which can stop you from getting into the market. And when you've got a fast-moving market like I think we're seeing in parts of Australia today, that can be pretty crucial and make a big difference.
Oh yeah, well that lost opportunity cost, isn't it? Like you might have 3 really good investment properties, but you have one maybe that's not so good, but that, I suppose, stunts your ability to grow your portfolio as a whole.
Correct, and I'd be preaching to the choir here because you guys do a lot of work with first home buyers, and you know that how sensitive people can be around valuations. So doing a bit of that work up front and seeing if the valuation's going to, not only are we looking at the rates, but how much they're going to lend as a percentage, but we're getting a valuation done as well, because that's going to determine how much you can borrow.
Yeah, absolutely.
And valuers can be different, right? So your first home buyers, this would be crucial for you guys.
It's the first step.
Well, evaluation, as we know, first home buyers haven't had the luxury to, generally they're not sitting on $100,000 or $200,000 worth of equity or cash. They're getting into the market the moment they can do something, which means there's not a large amount of buffer in place for them to suck up a valuation. And a lot of people, I think, have the idea around that the valuation is a true indication of what the property's worth. I don't believe so, because I think there's so many other little factors. It's based on the personal opinion of that value at the time, and yet you can have 3 different banks agree by, we've seen it $80,000 on the same property. And I think, whilst it's not spoken about, I definitely think there's some sort of instruction happening from the bank standpoint in relation to how conservative, based on the risk or whatnot, that happens there. But we won't get started and start going too deep into that because I'll be like a broken record. But mate, now that we're talking about first home buyers, we've seen the government obviously in the last couple of months with the home builder scheme and incentives, and it's amazing how quickly things can change. Right from March, whereby everyone was quite scared, and then they're in the middle of May, and then we're seeing just this avalanche of first home buyer activity. It's monumental, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we see it from a few different perspectives because we've got a land development business which has its own land developments through predominantly southeast Queensland today. And then we've got the custodian business, which just deals with investors. So our land developments, we're probably not seeing a lot of investors buying in them today because they're just being soaked up by first home buyers and upgraders. And the home builder incentive, I don't know what you're seeing. I'm still finding it a little bit hard to work my way through exactly what is and isn't allowed.
Yeah.
Certainly what has gotten a bit of attention lately is whether the $25,000 is allowed to be used as a deposit or not. I've not seen a loan go through our invest loan business where you have been able to use it as a deposit. I've only seen the commentary from newspaper articles to say that the Office of State Revenue is now going to allow the 25,000 to count. Whereas, so we've had a few go through, but they've all had the 25,000, fortunately, and they could get reimbursed for it. So I don't know. You guys might even have a better idea than me. Are you seeing it start to be counted?
Well, mate, not yet. I mean, there's still hindsight's a wonderful thing. I'm sure the government would love to go to the market or Australians with a clear understanding of how this was going to look and how it was going to work. But they just didn't have the time, in the middle of a crisis and pandemic. They just had to get out there and start stimulating. But what it's done is it's certainly attracted or piqued people's interest in terms of they want to do something. Whether those deals are necessarily settling and going through is another thing which I have reservations about, whether the fallover rate is probably a little bit higher because there is that little bit of there is that unknown, like on the coalface here where we're doing it day in, day out. There's still not a lot of certainty in relation to that. Yeah. You're hearing whispers like it can be done with deposits, and as you said, media outlets saying that the Holy Grail's happened and we can use it as a deposit, but there still hasn't been the lenders, and that's most importantly, come out and say, yes, we will do this in concrete. If you're watching and you do know something we know, don't know, let us know, but to our knowledge, the deposit situation is still a little bit unclear. But nonetheless, what we're seeing is it's building confidence in the market. There's people that aren't scared. Their mindsets are shifting away from being fearful about what's going on in the world to being proactive. And on the back of that now, I'm starting to see investors enter the market again on the back of, I suppose, renewed confidence in the property market because it hasn't dropped the 30% that we anticipated. And in fact, now we're seeing reports and suggestions from reputable companies, and we'll touch on that now, like Westpac.
Well, I was going to say they've only so home builders only been around since I think June the 8th they announced it, and I don't think it was another month until they had the formal wording of it all. Yeah. So
and then another month later the application was over.
I think it was only a couple of weeks 60 ago. Days. There you go, only a few weeks ago, and I think even then they forecast 17 to 25,000 people to apply for this $25,000 incentive, of which was going to include renovations and the other. They're up to 40,000 already. And what are we? We're 25th of September. Yeah. Still got 3 months to run.
Yeah. And this is where buyers have been pushed. They've come into the market and then they've pushed extensions to the extreme, hoping that, the 25 grand of funds to complete. But unfortunately, with the other buyers ready that have their finance ready, contracts being cancelled, they won't renew their contracts either for clients that have had 6 extensions. Then they get moved out of the estate as well. So,
look, I mean, we're a developer as well, so we see both sides, but I think you're a bit of a mug if you're a developer and you're cancelling on someone just because they're waiting for the 25,000. It's common sense is gonna prevail at some point. Like, you just got to work with these guys. If you can be shown a conditional approval subject to the 25,000 being available at settlement, That should be enough. I mean, common sense is going to prevail at some point. What's the point of a stimulus if it's not a stimulus?
Yeah,
you
that's
don't get it.
I think some of them, talking to them when we're trying to communicate those extensions, I think that it's short-lived. We need to take the opportunity while we can, Tom, to while we've got buyers to settle them, get them off our books, because there's some of them are more leveraged than others, developers, so they have that finance behind them, but they're not as understanding. I was reading yesterday, I think 2 days ago, everyone was releasing how ANZ said they'll support the funds to complete. But when I was speaking to a broker yesterday, he was basically saying you still have to have 19%, 20% deposit to then make up that difference. So even like a client trying to do a 95% LVR lend, to try and get the 25 grand funds to complete, you actually need more of a deposit than 5%. To then get access to it. So there's still things they're trying to work out.
Still a lot of grey areas.
Yeah, still heaps of grey areas,
But how good an opportunity is it if you are a first-time buyer? Like your $500,000 home, what's that normally cost you? Maybe 50 grand for the deposit plus, 10 or 20 grand of your on costs, so 60, 70 grand. You don't pay stamp duty.
LMI?
So there's about 10. You don't pay LMI if you're with the right bank, correct? Yep. You're getting 40 grand from the state and federal government, so you're probably getting away with it with 10. And then if you're able to get someone else to kick in a little bit to give you a bit of an incentive,
happy days.
It's a free property.
And that's what
equity in the house.
And I think Queensland,
they haven't saved.
It's 50 grand equity straight away.
I think Queenslanders have been, I suppose, are the ones that benefit from it the most, because I was speaking to someone just recently, and we based in Sydney, of course, and they sort of underplay the importance of what $25,000 does. And I think for someone looking to purchase their first home, first of all, there's not a lot available under $750 to meet the requirements to be eligible, first and foremost. But $25,000 is not going to be necessarily a game changer in Sydney. It's going to be a little bit of a top-up, but not going to be the difference between doing something and not doing something. Whereas in Queensland, like you just mentioned, you put that together with your Queensland, your state incentives, your 15, you're at 10%. In some cases, if you're looking around, your more affordable, suburbia type estates and areas, you're at 10%. And
that's a good point. Yeah.
And so I think for Queenslanders in particular, it's been, terrific in the sense that they've been able to utilise it. And I'd say out of those 40,000 applications, you'd have to think the majority are coming out of Queensland and Perth, because Victorians have been locked down, and I don't know what the levels of buyer activity are there with the limited access to be able to move around and whatnot. But you'd have to think that WA, Queensland and Adelaide would be the front runners on those sort of initiatives.
Well, I was going to say, like, your land data is distributed in a lag. So Charterkek produced, or Research 4 produce all of your land data. They produced their report in July, which covered April, May, June, right? So 3-month period where you had about 22 days of home builder being in play. Land sales across Australia were 100% up, double the same time last year. And that was only 22 days in.
Wow.
Now, we're not going to get this data for July, August, September till probably October at the earliest. Anecdotal evidence is probably all you can go off. And I'm seeing on the ground that developers have run out of stock.
100%.
We're already seeing probably a few developers marketing their land as home builder eligible, whereas if you sort of look at the trucks on site, you think, oh, geez.
It's cutting it fine. And that's, I think, mate, you're spot on, because what I noticed, and I think, and it leads me to another point whereby we might be looking at the perfect storm in terms of the property boom on the back of the incentives, because what I'm noticing is a lack of supply, like a massive undersupply, because March hit, coronavirus, everyone's panicking and going crazy, and developers, they tightened up, fucking stop the trucks, let's stop everything. And then these sort of incentives and stimulus come out, and it's just not, if you look at some of the big players, some of the big estates, the Springfields and that sort of areas, they're talking like June next year for registration. So that anyone who wants to buy in Springfield is not going to get that 25,000.
Yep.
So the total underwhelming, I suppose, supply is a good thing for those that are already in the marketplace. That's for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I think there is a perfect storm. We've been obviously having to study those numbers to give our clients some sort of foresight on sort of what we're going to see as a result of COVID-19. Interesting fact is our numbers will be slightly down on this time last year in the investment business, but not substantially. And what we found is where we probably had about 30% of our sales coming from repeat buyers, so clients who have a portfolio already, that's probably gone to about 70%.
Wow.
So they've picked up the slack. And the reason is, their mortgages their mortgage costs have probably dropped by at least 40%. So they've all of a sudden gone from maybe having to put in a couple $100 a week after rent to maybe now 100, maybe even less, depending on where they are. So we're seeing a big appetite from investors who've got property. On the other hand, we are seeing probably a bit of cautiousness, albeit it is receding a little bit, from people who want to invest but don't have property. They don't have investment property. They don't have the rent coming in. They don't have the structure set up with their loans and all the rest. So that sort of fear of the unknown is certainly was very present April, May, probably less so now. Whereas our investors, they're pretty gung-ho in this environment.
They've seen proof that their cash flows increased with the interest rate continuing to drop.
Correct, and a lot of them built their portfolios in the 2000s, whether it was post 9/11 or the global financial crisis, and it's an interesting exercise to do that because they're not the same, But if you we obviously love data, so we look at a lot of numbers. And when this all hit, John pulled me into his office and he said, right, we've got to look a little bit back in time because although they're not the same, it's going to give us some indication of what's to come. So we pulled up the Black Friday numbers, which was the stock market crash in 1987. The biggest stock market crash there's ever been.
I think there was something on Netflix, a show on Netflix, and there's people jumping out of the buildings and all sorts of stuff.
Oh, it was really bad, right?
Yeah,
like the
horrific.
biggest. John says in his time in real estate, which is 40 years now, the worst he's ever seen it.
Wow.
Was 87. So that was a bit of a calamity. 2001, you had 9/11, which wasn't as big a crisis, but it shut down financial markets for a time.
Yep.
And then you've got the global financial crisis. Now, Black Friday, following Black Friday from 1988 to 1990, Sydney median house price went up by 45%. Melbourne, 53%. Brisbane, 63%.
Wow.
So we saw almost the opposite, where although the stock market and although the economy might not have been doing too well in that period, housing market was resilient, if not sort of, sort of like the opposite effect. Maybe people flock to the safety of housing. Yeah. Go to the global financial crisis, and similar thing happened. Like Sydney went up 20% from 2010 to 12. Melbourne went up by 25% from 2010 to 12, and Brisbane only 4%, but increased by 22% from 13 to 16. So,
but Brisbane in that 2011 was affected by the Queensland floods.
Well, it had the double whammy, didn't it?
Yeah, that's right. And I think, particularly for the Queensland market, I think Queensland's been unlucky for multiple different, avenues whereby we've missed out, as we know, Brisbane follows Melbourne, which follows Sydney, but we've sort of been the unlucky little sister whereby we just keep these events keep happening, whereby we're meant to be next, and then you have something like the Royal Commission and the election last year, which disrupted things. You have 2011, you have the floods, and then 2007 and 8, you have the GFC. But now on the back, and now you've got the coronavirus, but now on the back of the stimulus, it's just pointing all the same direction, which is a really positive result.
I was going to say, so the difference though between the global financial crisis and today is it's not a liquidity crisis. There's a lot of money floating around. And you guys would be seeing that. You'd be seeing developers running out of projects, a bit nervous about where to put money. And the reason is, if you look at all of the savings accounts in Australia, right, in 2009-10, off the back of the global financial crisis, we were sitting on $650 billion worth of cash. Wow. Today, we're sitting on $2.2 trillion.
Wow.
We're sitting on more than 3 times the amount of cash in our savings accounts today than we were in the global financial crisis 10 years ago. And we saw we saw what house prices did then.
Yeah.
Let alone when we've got, two things. We've got all this cash that we're sitting on, and interest rates are about, I'd have to say they were 6.5%, 7% back then. So you've gone from $1 million loan costing you $1,200 a week to $1 million loan costing you $400 a week.
Yeah.
So it's all converging, as you say, perfect storm. It's all converging, and it means a bit for investors, because it's never been as easy to get started in terms of building your portfolio, because you don't have to put the cash flow out.
Yeah. You don't have to save for 5 years.
And on the back of this morning's announcement, which Josh Frydenberg's expected to come out today and confirm it, but responsible lending laws to be axed, which is going to provide people easier access to credit again, really stimulating that property market, people getting in.
Yeah, agree, and and that probably went too far the other way. Like in America, the obligation is on the lender.
Yep.
So it's 100% on the lender's shoulders that they've got to assess the creditworthiness of the borrower.
Yep.
Now, in our system, it's always been on the borrower. And the reason is that in America, if the lender gets it wrong, you can just give the keys back. You just hand it back. If you can't make the repayment, you just hand it back.
Really?
It's their problem.
Yeah, right.
Whereas in Australia, it's your problem.
So you're telling me
you got it both ways,
Yeah, so you're telling me I default, on my mortgage in America. Oh, well, that didn't work out. Here's the keys.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. Phenomenal. Well, hopefully there's a fine balance. I mean, you'd hate for it to swing the other way, and then there's just no responsible lending whatsoever, because ultimately that's going to end in tears, as we know.
Oh, and I think our bank, we're very fortunate. Our banks are probably some of the best in the world.
Yeah.
Certainly by their, how big they are and how well they do. Their strength has probably gotten us through this past 6 months, being able to defer payments and sort of do a bit of the heavy lifting to help us out.
Yeah. Mate, is there areas, I mean, you as you say, you're numbers driven, and whilst we're focused purely on Southeast Queensland, it's our market from the Sunshine Coast as a home builder to the Gold Coast and out sort of to Ipswich. But as we know, there's a broader national market that is at play. Are there areas or states or, are there particular locations that you guys are looking at closer, as obviously there is, but for your custodian clients?
Yeah, so we follow a pretty simple criteria. It's been the same since 1998. Subtle deviations, but the same. And that is we get a balance between growth and cash flow, because, whilst it's important to own land in high growth areas, it can't cost you a bomb to get it.
Yeah.
So John, since day one, has said, look, we want to buy land in high growth areas. We want it to be, pretty good from a cash flow point of view. So today that would be sort of cash flow neutral or positive from day one, certainly after tax. And then what we really want to do is we want to add to the portfolio. So we want to buy, we want to get the growth. We don't want to sell it. We want to keep it and then use the growth to buy another one and another one and another one and access compound growth. Because compound growth is, it's the secret sauce. Show me any of the successful people, and I'll show you a strategy that they've got that gives them compound growth. And it doesn't matter if you're an investor or a business person or an athlete. They've got a strategy that gives them compound incremental growth and improvement. So, and it's no coincidence that, as I said, John was taught by the Jewish property moguls back in the day. It's no coincidence that they account for 33% of the top 15 wealthiest people in Australia.
Wow.
33%. Yet only 0.4% of all Australians are Jewish.
There you go. That's quite astonishing, really, isn't it?
It's amazing. And that's because they understand these things. Another one of John's sayings, cash is like oxygen. You run out and it's over very quickly for you. So you got to have cash flow, you got to have growth, but most importantly, you want to get compound growth. So we're always looking at the balance between those two markets. Cash flow, we want to be able to borrow on interest only, particularly if they've got a home debt. So we're sort of balancing that up. We want to go new because we like the fact that you builders foot the bill if there's any, big ticket items that go wrong down the track.
Yeah,
you've got the warranties and all that, which are so invaluable as an investor, to know that the insurer, the council, or the builder is going to be paying for it. And in Queensland, we've got extra protection through the QBCC insurance as well. So, it's a very safe place to invest, Southeast Queensland in that respect. So we want to get that right, and then we want an area that's going to grow, and that's just having 3 to 5 times the Australian population growth. We want to have infrastructure, both today and future planned, community, public, private, the whole lot. That's your shopping centres, schools, hospitals, universities, all the rest. And then we want to get into the right market at the right time, because they cycle. So although the median house price has grown, or doubled rather, every 10 years, 70 to 80% of that growth occurs in a 2 to 3 year window.
So it could be, if you get it wrong, it could be a 17-year cycle for you.
Yeah, that's
and that's not what you want. That's not what you want.
That's not what you want.
And obviously you guys have become very good at it, to be around for 30 plus years and have clients averaging 3+ properties each. Now that's an average, so you've obviously got clients that have got maybe 5, 6, 10 more perhaps.
Got a single mother with 21.
Yeah, wow. So those sort of, you don't build those portfolios without having the system in place to get good property.
Yeah, I think you got to have a long-term view though. So, you can do all the research that you want, but no one's got a crystal ball.
Correct.
So look, I think Southeast Queensland's the best place to be buying today. I've just recently settled another one on Monday. I like the Northern Gold Coast patch. Running out of land up there, but where I am, it's sort of 10% population growth. There's a new railway station going in. You've got shopping centres, schools, all that nearby. I don't think that the Gold Coast will have any land in 12 months.
No.
That's just, and you guys are Gold Coast guys, so you just know that
it's already
the
tough
council doesn't
now.
want it.
It's already tough to get blocks now.
There you go.
And, there's people, they say that I want to buy 550,000 on the Gold Coast. Great, but that doesn't do it anymore. That used to be, you used to be able to get to that northern Gold Coast sector for sort of sub 500 grand, but now the population, I think it's 13% annual population growth there in the in Coomera, Pimpamar, those sort of spots. But you're paying 550 now. You've really got in the Gold Coast. Where do you go? You've got Mount Tamborine, which stops you from going west. There's no land.
Need Bob L to develop down in Cobbacai.
Cobbacai, that's right.
I think he's
Forest.
That's no good for us, mate. We don't have a New South Wales license.
Yeah, that's right.
Hey, you can get one. How hard can it be?
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Still, the house is the house. Hey, mate, I know you mentioned there quickly land. Do you guys always recommend land as the option? You sort of don't go into the townhouse apartment side?
Always land. And if you study the numbers on land are this. It's gone up by about 7.2% per annum, the median house price, right? Whereas, and that means it would have in the last, call it the last 35, 40 years, it would have multiplied on itself 8.5 times. A block of land in the same period would have gone up on a per square metre rate by 40 times. So it's the land that's growing, and that's the front cover of John's book, been the front cover since day one, is, we buy real estate, which is land. Property is the building that sits on top of it, which is important, right? Because it gives you cash flow. You can't just buy a block of land. Otherwise, you got no
quickest
cash flow.
way to go broke, isn't it? You can either build a house or farm it, but if it just sits there. And
you guys are experts in finding ways to build an efficient home that doesn't overcapitalise, that you guys can build pretty quickly, turn around, because cash flow, getting that construction period done so you can get a tenant in, very important, right? But if you study the numbers, median house price in Brisbane gone up from 59,000 to 560,000 since 1986, right? Wow. So good, really, really good, right? But technically, that's not true, right? And what I mean by that is the property you were buying in 1986, what was it? It was 1,000 square metres, 15, 20 Ks from a CBD.
Yeah, different size.
It's not worth 560 grand. What's that worth?
Yeah.
Double.
Probably is double. I think you're right, Tom. It's probably worth $1 million, you know? Depending which way you go and where you are. So, and that's the power of the land, and that's what doesn't get reflected in the data that you read about, is that, really it's probably grown by about 9% if you look at the actual property.
Yeah. Any blocks within 20 Ks radius of the CBD, it's hard to get anything wider than 10 meters. So you're looking
so what are
at
you getting for
300 square
1,000?
meters.
Yeah, that's right.
You have 1,000 square meter block.
That's
brand new.
almost a subdivision in Brizzy.
And
You get 4 blocks out of that.
I sat down with a client not long ago who's they got their own business in Sydney, and they got quite a lot of properties, but 3 or 4 of them are 1,000 square metre corner blocks, a K from a train station. So she's now thinking, what do I do with it? Do I build 3 or 4 dwellings on it, which would take it from giving her $500 a week rent to maybe giving her as much as $1,500 a week rent. So that's the power of land, and why we say you buy land today with a 10-20 year horizon that it's going to go up at some point. You've got to build a good quality home on it, brand new right now, that's going to give you cash flow, but most importantly, cash flow reliability and predictability, right? Yeah. So many people sort of go after the 1 or 2 year old home, and you void your warranty. You've got no warranty, you've got no recourse, you don't know what you're buying.
Yeah, exactly.
Most times you're buying someone else's problem.
Exactly right. And that's that's what we talk about a lot, because for the new housing market, for an investor, for me as well, being in the industry, having opportunities not just in the new space, but for me, I just want to know that I'm going to buy that house, it's going to do its thing, I'm going to go to bed every night, I'm not going to have to worry about waking up one day and getting termites in there or a dishwasher breaking or whatever. It's all going to be gravy.
Yeah, and if you're lucky enough to have a builder who's been, Pivotal been around for 20 plus years.
Yeah, close to 20 years.
In the building game, that's that most don't last 5 years. I reckon.
Correct.
So a lot of them don't even last the statutory warranty period.
Yeah, correct.
On the slab.
Yeah, that's right, and that's a very good point, James, because we've seen builders come and go, and partnering with someone just like yourself. You guys have been around for 30 plus years, us 20 years or close to. Partnering with people who have that reputation of being there, seen it, done that, and I suppose that trusted source to be able to help them navigate through what, no doubt about it's an uncertain time for people on the outside, but having people who have been through it, like you said, those numbers where John's sitting you down, he's taking you through the stats of Black Friday and the GFC. It must make it a lot easier to turn up to work and tell the clients, don't worry, we've been here before, it's all going to be sweet.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like I'm a lawyer and accountant by background, so I'm cautious, nervous, anti-risk.
That's a decaf.
Soy.
Yeah, that's right.
No, so look, I started. I went and got my law degree. Was working as a lawyer, and 10 years ago, it was about 10 years ago, I started working for John, and I was doing a cadet, like a work experience 2 weeks, right? And I just had a lot of fun. It just was a fun environment. The development and construction business, it just felt like there was something there. So I quit my law job pretty much there and then,
right,
on the basis I'd go into property law.
Right.
And then sort of 6 months went on, and 12 and 24 and 10 years. But I ended up, my first job was running our construction business. Now, we don't build. We do the mortgage broking, but we've never built and we've never property managed and never will, because we could not even go close to doing it as good. You know what I mean? It's a different culture, and to find the balance between all the different challenges with building and renting, very hard. But when I first started, we had, 10, 15 builders around Australia that were building for us, and we guarantee the price. So we take a risk for the client. We guarantee that it'll be a fixed price. Even if the builder goes broke, we'll step in and build it and fix it and do it for them. And we guarantee that they'll have rent by a certain period.
Yeah, wow.
So the biggest thing for us is, and when I started in 2010, we had a lot of retail builders building for us, right? They had retail display businesses, and I'm not mocking, this isn't meant as criticism at all, and I know you guys might have displays, you might not, but I know that you specialise in investment building, and our biggest issue at the time is all our jobs were way overdue. Way overdue, like I'm talking 6-12 months overdue, because what happened is the market ran, and all of a sudden their retail business got all the focus. And the investment business was like the poor cousin. You know what I mean? So all our jobs were overdue, and whilst there might have been liquidated damages and this and that, and you might come out okay in the end, we were paying at the time $1 million a year in rent for people, Now we were getting a lot of that back through builders in our own arrangements, right? But we would have lost a lot of clients in that process for a 12-month period where we just weren't able to deliver. And I think that's the balance between building for investment. You can't have the retail mindset because you've got to build them quick.
Well, it's unnecessary stress through the process too. You know, for the person, if it's their first time, you need to, it might scare them off. No matter how good the property performs, it might scare them off property investing for life, which ultimately has detrimental effects to how they live out in their retirement, right? But from our point of view, what's really important as a builder is that we understand the investment mindset, and we don't have a retail play, we don't have a retail space, simply with B2B partners with an investment focus, so that we understand that every week that goes on is another repayment that needs to be made where there's income not coming in, which ultimately is going to add some sort of financial stress the longer that goes on. Now, obviously, someone like yourself and a good advisor and strategist is accounting for those sort of timelines in 16 weeks or 20 weeks or however long it is. But if it continues to go over that continually, things aren't planned or forecasted, it's going to sour the what should have been a positive experience for the investor, to the point where we include through our construction a depreciation schedule. It's another thing that
as a builder,
the client doesn't
not a lot
think
of builders do that. Yeah,
we get professional photographer out there at PC, get nice photos. Let's get it online ASAP for you, so you don't have to wait for property managers to do their thing and organise it. So having that, and you guys obviously the same, having that investor mindset, even if it's not your property, but understanding what the intricate details are that go in the background of making that a smooth and easy process. Very important.
Yeah, and you achieving the rents quicker for them. If you can get access to the property in photos before handover, and you're advertising the property, you're booking inspections prior to that or at handover. It's a big win if you can rent the property.
And from my point of view, I was coming from the lawyer accountant background, so I'm trying to remove risk, right? But you can't in our game. You cannot remove risk. You've got to manage it, and the biggest risk when it comes to property investment is cash flow. It's the one that can sort of really take your knees from under you, and a lot of it's time. Time's the biggest one that can really hurt you. Whether you're a developer, whether you're an investor, or whether you're a builder. I know that you guys, if you build them late, you're probably losing out on the job as well. So it goes both ways. And the learning for me was I saw all these household names that I was familiar with that are on the TV that advertise, and I associated with them that was going to be the lowest risk, whereas they were the highest risk. The lower risk was those who really specialised in investment, got the balance right between the cost, because cost is important, sure, but time can, if your time blows out, cost can very quickly become insignificant.
Yeah, exactly.
And then quality is that start and end part, where that's where it blows out when I've seen it, is getting to site and finishing the job at the end, and getting everything, but then coming back for some of the little things if you need to, like because it does, Tom. It costs you 2-3 weeks where you can't advertise the property.
Yep. And it's small things where clients are waiting 3 weeks, and your time's up by 3. It's okay, and it's $500 a week. They've lost $1,500. It does add up within 3 weeks of that time frame, so it makes a huge difference.
Missed out on a good tenant, all those sorts of things. Stuff. Now they've got to have a dog.
That's right. And mate, look, that's exactly right there. It's got to be a balancing act between quality, price, and service. There's an old saying, quality, service, and price, pick two. That's how it goes. But it doesn't have to be like that, in our opinion. It just doesn't. It's a matter of being able to just share the importance of those equally. They're all equally as important. Again, you might have the best quality house at the best price, but if no one ever tells you what's going on, you're still going to think that's, I shouldn't have done that. This is is shit.
And in the longevity of being around for so long, yourself, when you're educating these clients, you can manage their expectations. Like as a builder, we know, like when COVID hit, we educated all the buyers. We've been through this GFC before. We got through it, because the first thing done is people were calling us, going, "Are you guys going to be okay? Something going to go wrong?" We're fine. We're managing this process to achieve the result. We're not going anywhere, because we've got a director that's been in the business and managing the business since day one, and he made decisions every day to make sure everyone's home's complete and going to be finished. And that's where other competitors sometimes go, but they're $5,000 cheaper. It's like they've been around for 3 years. They've built 100 homes. Are they going to be here in 5 years or the warranty period of
Mate,
6?
I've had 7 builders go broke.
Yeah, wow.
In 10 years.
Yeah.
And it always
That wasn't on your
happens.
LinkedIn profile.
No. But seven builders go broke in 10 years. And a lot of them were younger businesses. And all of them, almost all of them, bar one, went under in a property boom.
Wow.
Yeah. Not managing cash flow, obviously.
I don't know. They're growing and, it must be cash flow and they're not managing their growth. And I can tell you right now, there is nothing harder than finishing a half-built job.
Yeah.
It's the worst thing that could possibly ever happen. It's even stressful for us, and we've done it 7 times, and we have a big business and infrastructure behind us and connections. You're dealing with tradies who haven't been paid, suppliers who haven't been paid, come in and take out all the
Concrete
bloody,
and
pipes and copper, and it's a nightmare. And I'd be guessing, but maybe 10% added to the cost minimum.
And
on
you
each
guys,
job.
and you guys are standing behind that and saying, "Well, we'll sort that out."
Yeah,
for you.
we've had to foot the bill.
Right.
And best thing we've ever done, because I reckon I could count 10 or 20 clients who've been caught up in that who have 7, 8, 10 properties with us. So
come back.
So that's why they come back. That's why they use us, and us being able to stand behind those guarantees. Crucial to having the trust of them.
Yeah,
as
if
a
the worst
client.
case thing does happen, at least I know these guys are going to look after me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's their problem.
Yeah, that's right.
And clients don't think like that. Sometimes they look at pricing in builders and they go, "Oh, are they all the same?" It's like, no. If and like you were saying before, if it's $5,000 more and you're making a decision of a builder that's here for 2 years or 15, it's like that $5,000 is nothing to what you're about to go through. Plus, then you've got to look at the differences in the contracts, of course. But a lot of the time, unfortunately, clients don't understand that pricing can just paying that little extra can save them. Like you said, you guys back them 100% of the way, but it easily can be $10,000 all of a sudden.
You get what you
they're
pay
down.
for.
Yeah, exactly.
Straight away.
Mate, are we going to see a shift? Oh, I think so. I mean, I saw some data. I think it was from PRD research yesterday, or 2 days ago, sorry, whereby the location and proximity to Brisbane CBD may not be such an influential element of a purchasing decision when it comes to property. With the success that we've seen with the ability for people to work remotely, regional areas as well, will they benefit, you think, from this whole shift in the way that people work?
I mean, ultimately, I don't know. I can only go off gut feel. I think, certainly I put a lot of weight towards Bernard Salt's view on this. He's Australia's #1 demographer. For those who don't know him that's listening, he made Smashed Avocado famous.
Yeah. I listened to your podcast the other day.
Didn't make it popular, but he made it famous, right?
Yeah.
So we had him on our webinars and podcast not long ago, and he's sort of saying that there's going to be a change to the way we live. It was probably already going that way. We were probably already looking for a way to work from home, be a bit more flexible, maybe even, and we're seeing this in the jobs data at the moment, maybe even have multiple jobs, where we have a couple of part-time jobs. Maybe that's going to be a more long-term way that our economy works and evolves. So I think having a home office is going to be pretty crucial to most people. I think maybe only having one car instead of 2 if you're not needing to, you can coordinate it with the partner. That might be important. And I think affordability and having space is going to be very important. We're seeing that at the moment. We're seeing, 0.8 to 1% vacancy rates in the middle and outer ring. We're seeing a real undersupply of rental accommodation out there and housing generally. Whereas the inner city, we're seeing 3, 4, 5% vacancy rates. So they were relying on maybe tourism. Potentially there was the student population that was using those a bit as well. But I think we've seen a shift already out to the outer suburbs, and we're seeing that no more significantly than down in Adelaide. We've got properties down there at the moment where we've had probably 14 homes handed over in the last 2 weeks. and every single one of them has been rented prior to handover.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you got the PC, as you're saying, Tom, we've been able to get in,
Yep.
advertise it, photos, all the rest, gone within 3 days, oftentimes with 6-7 applicants.
Yeah, wow.
And we're hearing that they're all moving out. So it's people within Adelaide who are looking for that little bit of space.
Yep.
South East Queensland, I'm sure, is going to go the same way.
Well, I think we're set up. The fundamentals are right here too, because the governments over the time and have done such a good job in connecting the outer areas through to the metropolitan if required. So you look at somewhere like Springfield or North Lakes or Logan, you can get to the CBD still relatively quickly. It's only still 25 half an hour from Springfield, or 25 half an hour from Homeview or North Lakes. It's still very easy and to be connected.
And you've got train stations as well.
We've got train lines in these
you've
areas
got public
too.
transport to rely on.
Yeah, I think I can see. I think it was already happening right before COVID-19. I thought there was already net interstate migration coming into southeast Queensland, so there was already that value proposition. I think it's going to be accelerated and maybe brought forward a few people's plans. The whole COVID-19 thing. I think Sydney and Melbourne, we're going to see people come up. Where are they going to go is a big question, and I think it's an issue. Although we have got good areas like your North Lakes, your Springfield, train station stops at Springfield. When are they going to kick it on to Ripley and other areas?
Yeah.
You can't build in Narangba and that whole gap between North Lakes and Moray Field. And the gap between North Lakes and Moray Field is a big gap from a socio-cultural and affordability point of view. So there's a missing gap there, which is tied up with sewer. And, so I'd like to see the state government take some initiative there, commit to those projects, bring forward the sewer in the north, extend the rail in the west, and maybe even free up a little bit more land in Logan as well. A similar problem through Park Ridge, where you've got sewer and a little bit of an ineligibility to bring on stock with some developers.
And I think, I was actually chatting, funny you bring up the train line to the west, because I was speaking to someone this morning about it who's presenting to a client, an investor, and I sort of made the comment, there's significant, those train line projects are in the government's infrastructure plans. They're gonna happen. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And as we've seen, the government is stimulating the economy with these big projects, bringing them forward. It may well be, with an asterisk beside it, as I say it, that those projects come to life a lot sooner than expected.
Especially if you have the migration coming up from Victoria and Sydney, people moving here and spending the money. It's wondering what the state government does.
It's sensitive, right? Because no one wants to pay for it.
Yeah, that's right.
So
developers don't want to release stages until we'll get more, until they extend that too. So you have people sitting on land at the same time.
Local council's got no money. State government's got too much debt. And the federal government, they got a lot of problems. So,
that's right.
Where do we spend it? The federal government, by the way, $400 billion a year that they spend, $160 billion of that goes into our welfare system. So that's 40%. About $12 billion goes into infrastructure, key infrastructure projects like the projects that we're talking about.
Wow.
So they're just, they've got the money, but they've also got other problems. State government have probably got to borrow the money to go and pay for it. But I would have thought it creates jobs. And it ultimately gives them rates, rate payers and population growth if you can provide affordable housing that is accessible.
Yeah.
Mate, and the property market in the new space is running off the shelf in terms of new house and land. One area that you may be across with the data is how's the existing market shaping up?
Well, so there's no stock.
Yep.
Listings are down 20%. If you look at Domain, REA, both of them are reporting around 20% increase in inquiry.
Wow.
So we're seeing it's sort of going both ways, right?
Yeah.
Sydney, if you look at Sydney, its clearance rate's sitting at about 70% off more stock going to auction this year than the same time last year.
Yeah, right.
And the same time last year, it was growing by 1% a month. So I think we're already seeing Sydney growing by probably 10% per annum on a pro rata rate at the moment. Brisbane, we don't do as many auctions, So it's a little, we don't get as live a read.
Yeah.
I can only go off, like where I live in Cannon Hill in Brisbane, there's suburb records going on left, right and centre, or certainly street records. There's no stock, and some stuff that is selling. I saw one sell, for probably 50 to 100 grand more than what I thought it was probably worth.
Yeah.
So I think we're already seeing the established markets start to bubble, and Gold Coast is probably even ahead of Brisbane. $12 million sales, $25 million sales, some big ticket items. But I, from what I'm hearing on the ground as well, and you guys might even know, the Gold Coast is very undersupplied as well compared to the inquiry.
Absolutely, and both from a sales point of view and a rental, there's just so much demand out there, and I think it comes back to what you said, whereby people have more money in their pockets than ever. There's so much cash sitting in the everyday person's account, or not. Not when I say so much cash, I'm not talking millions of dollars for the everyday person, but they've got more cash because they've been tighter with their money. There's this stimulus going on.
You can't spend it.
That's right, and there's nowhere to go for dinner, and you can't even stand up and get on the piss and chug through them at lefties.
Well, I reckon it's. I honestly, I can't wait to see what it looks like in 12 months. And the Borders has a lot to do with it because we're saving. They reckon we're saving 19% of our pay at the moment, which is the highest percentage since 1974.
Yeah, right.
Like, can you imagine?
74.
74, the highest percent that we're saving from our pay, 19% since 1974. We're sitting on that 2.2 trillion worth of cash, right? So that's obviously we've already coming off a strong base. In addition to that, we spend $60 billion a year going overseas. We only receive $40 billion from overseas people coming in.
Right.
So I don't reckon people are going to spend. If you normally allocate 10, 20 grand for a overseas holiday, I can't see you allocating the 10 or 20 grand to go into Australia.
No.
So where are you going to spend it?
Yeah, exactly right. You start looking at other things, don't you?
Harvey Norman.
Yeah, that's right.
Do up the furniture.
Their
Unfortunately, that's what some people did with their super, but the other people would have pulled that super out, put it in their bank savings account, use it more leverage to buy more property or investments. There's heaps of, there's more cash than ever.
Yeah, $32
for.
billion taken out of super. Crazy.
Expensive stimulus package, isn't it?
It's so much money. I've never seen so much money thrown around by a government. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible. And a big opportunity for us. I think we're going to see 5 years of interest rates at 2-3%, which, if you're buying a property yielding you 4.5%, you're positive from day one. No matter what the property does.
Yeah.
And
If
that's
you
what
take
makes
a 10-year view, it's going to go up at some point. Who cares? It costs you nothing.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's what's so not good about Southeast Queensland. You're getting that pretty much everywhere up to 5. If you can get some key areas, you get over 5%.
Yeah,
And you put a 10% deposit down.
I don't know if you guys do too many dual occupancies, but they can be like 6%, right?
Yeah, probably even higher now because there's a huge demand for them as well.
There you go.
So we've just handed over a couple, and there was 3 in a row that we. So there's 3 in a state that we done. They all finished within like a week of each other, and they're all rented before handover. I was just blown away. Just even that was like a month ago. So
unbelievable.
Crazy. And you put 10% down on any property really in Southeast Queensland. It's really covering what it cost you.
And Bernard, so this is sort of on topic, but a little bit moving away. So sorry if I've jumped a bit.
No, that's all right.
But one thing that Bernard Salt did say, which I thought, I've never really thought of that, is he said, what if we were worried about global warming, we were worried about China trade war as being the big issues of the 2020s. What if the big issue of the 2020s is we're in and out of pandemics? We're in and out of lockdowns. What does that mean?
And that's such a...
What does that mean?
Yeah, exactly. I was about to ask you, and I'm like, no point me asking you what that means because no one knows. I mean, it's such a different world. Even 12 months ago, you look back at where we are now, and you would have, if you said this was what was going to happen, you'd be like, mate, you are on some good stuff. But
right.
It's the reality of what we're dealing with, and there's no solution on the horizon. I think we've just got to get on with it. And as Australians, we've done that. And done that well. So far, we're sort of getting on with our lives and luckily be very, very fortunate to be in the country that we are under some, what I believe anyway, amazing leadership from the top. But on a property perspective, it's just shown again I mean, Australians have again, the Australian property market has again proved why Australians just love it. And they just have a love affair with it because, as you said, they're fleeing. Australians more than ever are fleeing back to bricks and mortar. They feel safe. It's not dropping. It's not volatile like we've seen in the share market over this time. And I think I think it'll just continue to perform.
Yeah, it's been very resilient.
Resilient, that's a great word.
It's really done. It hasn't gone down in value, despite what you'd read in the press. The press, they like headlines, and the bank economists more than anyone love a headline. Love to predict. What are that? They forecast 20 of the last 2 recessions. They love to get their headlines and their mug in the paper, but they seem to have this impression that house prices are tied to employment. And it's the only real thing that you could say. You could say, oh yeah, employment is one thing that is going to be something that we're going to have to work our way through over the next 2-3 years as an economy, right? We're going to go to whether it's 8-9%. No one knows just yet. And they're talking about it's going to take us about 3 years to get back down to sort of 7, and then maybe even 5 years to get back to the sort of 5-6% that we were at. If you look at those numbers, 8-9% unemployment, which is their worst case. The last time that we had 8-9% unemployment, Sydney median house price grew by 14.5%. There's no relationship between unemployment and housing. That's where the economists, they've just whether they've missed it or whether they sort of seen it there, but they've decided to play it safe. I don't know, but there's no relationship. The relationship is between affordability, all-time low, supply, arguably all-time low, particularly with new projects coming out of the ground. Very hard for a developer. Like we know it firsthand. So hard for a developer to get finance today. And then demand. And demand is a bit of an unknown. Population growth, 150,000 a year come from births over deaths. I don't think that's going to change. No. If anything, I think we might have more births, if anything. We get about 100,000 students, net increase in students each year. I don't know why they wouldn't still come here. So I'm not sure that they won't be here. And then there's about 100,000 that come from overseas migrants coming here to work and set up. And that one obviously is going to be affected. How much that's offset by the undersupply, I don't know. But then you've also got to consider the fact that there's 1 million expats overseas that may come back. They're allowing 6,000 a week back at the moment. What if 300,000 of them come back and no one leaves? And that's, it's a really, really good point about the population growth. But from a Queensland perspective, I feel like that's not even really a worry for us because the net migration from Sydney and Melbourne is so strong. Maybe for Sydney and Melbourne, you should be looking at that data. But from a Queensland point of view, I'd be resting my head quite comfy on my pillow when I go to bed saying, well, there's still going to be people in the masses coming to Queensland. And if you're in and out of lockdown, like Bernard Salt suggests, I'd probably rather do it in a winter with a low of 15 degrees.
That's right. Yeah, exactly right.
Than the alternative.
Mate, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. We've got to start to wrap it up. How's the best way for people that may be watching get in contact with your organisation? Yeah,
so we've got a podcast of our own called The Double Shot, thedoubleshot.com.au. We've got a website for that. Myself and my cousin do that. Otherwise, just go to www.custodian.com.au. We have fortnightly webinars. We have John's book available for sale on there as well. So that'll be the best place for people to start, get a bit of an idea. They can book a consultation, look at a webinar, buy the book. Doesn't matter, no matter which stage they're at, whether they're early days or a bit more advanced, they can pick the option that they best like.
Yeah, mate. And awesome. And on a closing note, for people who are looking at buying property or nerves about buying property, what would you sort of say to those people who are watching there?
I think you'll I always get asked, when's going to be the best time to buy? It's the first question on every webinar that I do every fortnight. Nico's laughing because it literally comes in before the webinar starts. And I always say to him, I reckon it was about 1963.
Yeah, right.
When's the best time to buy? It was 50 years ago.
Yeah.
But look, I see today, like I'm 30 years old. I'm just starting building my own portfolio. But I'm a little bit restless because I see that we've got this 5-year window where I can go out and buy a property at 4.5%. It is going to yield, probably 4% net, right, after your costs and everything. And I'm going to be borrowing for probably in the 2s this time next year. So I just see that building that portfolio, I look at people who started in 2010, you're paying 6.5%. Property was costing you $300 a week to hold. Today, you're $50 cash flow positive from day one before you got your tax return.
Yep.
So I just see this window of opportunity where if your cash flow is okay and you're in an area that's got population growth, demand, tenants, all that, I just see that you've managed all the risks as best you can. If you go in with a 10, 20-year long-term mindset, you're going to do very well.
Yeah.
So don't miss the window, is my opinion. And the hardest part is getting started. Like getting up and,
making that
out
decision.
of bed, like quitting smoking. The hardest part is starting, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. James, mate, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate you joining us for a chat.
Thanks,
So
boys.
really good information. Thank you for listening and watching Everything Property by Pivotal Homes. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe. But until next time, see you later.
Thanks, guys.